go through the whole cycle of surviving and flourishing. Probably right now the market perspective is that it's really heavy on Bitcoin. Regarding the right blockchain for putting dApps on top, I think it's free for all. Anyone can choose what's best for them. And to be honest, at this point, I don't think it really matters. The dApp developers can choose whichever is fit for them, and but always think about migrating to something that will survive.
I personally have a similar opinion with Joony. I think many of the corporates and governments are going to try to develop private blockchains instead of public blockchains. So we need to have some kind of killer app to have some mass adoption as well as the level of Ether. But for the time being, I think it's kind of hard for us to predict whether the project is going to succeed or not. So we'll have to see.
Is there do you think there's an Ethereum fueler coming up? Anyone, any new project that's going to overtake Ethereum?
Just direct answer is I don't know. But the thing is, I noticed that still the community around Ethereum is very strong. And as DevCon, basically, Ethereum Festival is happening in Osaka next week. I still see that a lot of people are very interested in what they're talking about there, what are discussed there. All of my friends over the world is coming to Osaka. So in that sense, community power is very, very strong. But said that, my personal opinion, not the BlockTower's opinion, my personal opinion is, I think Ethereum is sort of centralized in that sense. So Vitalik is sort of like everyone in the Ethereum community, I think they're almost considering him as manager of the company. But Vitalik is not Harvard Business School grad, or he's not a manager. So people think that he's a manager, but he does not function as a manager. So I think that's why all the community or conflicts or miscommunication within the Ethereum community makes all the developments dragging a little bit every time they cannot meet the timeline. So that's why I think, I don't know, community is strong, but the way they works is very concerning for me.
I'm pretty much agree with Steve. And I think, in my personal opinion, Bitcoin and Ethereum has different positioning, since Bitcoin has inelastic supply system, and Ethereum also is, they're thinking about POS and POW, and it's more about smart contract, and they're getting more, trying to make more infrastructures in the blockchain world. So Bitcoin has its own unique positioning that by just owning as a sort of value or putting it as an asset. So those things makes Bitcoin and Ethereum different. So I think that's the biggest reason why Bitcoin wants to possess the market here.
Yeah, I think network effect is really important. Ethereum still has the most developers supporting it, and I think everything takes time. So even like 6 months to a year for devs to work on dApps, there needs to be more time for things to develop.
So there's of course a lot of discussion about this. When Tron was coming out, there was a discussion around that. But basically, I think the economy, the market has learned their lessons. We're not so easily fooled anymore by simple statements such as they are the next Ethereum. That's a lot of BS. So now that everybody is a lot smarter, we'll wait to see about that. But I think in the coming months, we should see something significant coming up. And I think before the news will come out, a lot of our friends over here will have their pocket in it. Yeah.
I think that's a good discussion. Coming to the point about what Vitalik says some time ago, he criticized about the Korean coin, a project that is homegrown. They talk about how a nationally tied digital asset, is going to work for Korea, for trading, for whatever purpose. Do you think, we are ready for such a coin in the current market? Do you think Korea coin is something that is feasible? Or have you heard about it? No, never.
Yeah, I can start. So if I take back a little bit, when you said Korea coin is more like a central bank type of coin, so as everyone knows, China is going to release this is not a cryptocurrency, but it's a digital coin that is basically a central bank of China. I think two things. So one, I think that's very positive impact on the entire crypto space because I think one thing we are missing for all the crypto adoption, this is everyone wanting to, is basically trust. So we are talking about trustless platform that blockchain provides, but I think the reason why the people outside the crypto community are not adopting cryptocurrency because they don't trust us. We need to gain the trust from the people outside the crypto community. Otherwise, we just celebrate ourselves, partying every day, just within ourselves. Adoption never gonna happen. So I think the first point I wanna make is this kind of coin is not a cryptocurrency, but I think that might actually attract some sort of the trust from non-crypto people that will eventually help them to look at us as at least they trust us a little bit, so they actually try what we build. So that's the first point. The second point is, I'll just mention Libra, if you are touching upon later. So Libra, everyone's talking about positive fact, everyone knows it, but I'll just mention two more concerning points. The one is, I think Libra is too private, that facilitated money laundering, but it's not too private. Actually, that actually prevents or actually makes it possible for the private rights intervention. So I think this kind of the famous name back coin has a very positive impact for the crypto community, but also very concerning point to the community.
Yeah, I think like a Korea coin or this news of Libra and this China coin, I think it's like a gateway drug for Bitcoin. People will get curious about what Bitcoin is to push mass adoption.
If you think of a crypto as a payment and a currency, I think it makes sense that if people start to use the national currency pegged stable coins, then it makes sense. But if you're focusing on like utility tokens such as like protocols, like Ether, we don't need Korean Ether, like US Ether, Chinese Ether. We just need global standards such as like Google Android Store, Apple Store. So I think we need to approach it in a different way.
I think the limited information I have regarding these country tokens, it's really difficult to comment on anything, right? Because though it's a digital currency, depending on how it's formed, how it's distributed, how users or how people can access it, we don't have any building blocks around this right now. So I think it's really, really difficult to say anything. Of course, like people will kind of link digital currency to cryptocurrency. It's easier from going from digital currency to cryptocurrency than going from fiat to cryptocurrency. So I guess people will kind of like look into it a bit more. But right now, I think it's just noise. I'm really curious on what China is building right now. I'm just hoping we'll be able to get some detail from them, at least before the Chinese people, or at the same time as the Chinese people get information around it.
Well, so I think we are all surrounding the concept of cashless societies. As we all know today in China, it's basically WeChat Pay, right? Alipay. Nobody use cash, right? I bring cash there. They don't accept it. They would assume it's fake, right? So it's all driving towards a cashless society. And I don't have a single doubt when this so-called China coin comes out, there's a lot of competition. I think a lot of countries that will follow suit because the model is there, and then it's probably about efficiencies in the countries. That's what I see.
I think this is more about. Some people say that blockchain and cryptocurrency is always together, and the others are not. So I think governments are basically they're centralized organizations. So what they're thinking or what they're maybe adopting the blockchain industry's technology, it's going to be a different story. So maybe they can adopt some of them technology from blockchain technology, but I don't think it's going to happen just like all the people saying decentralized or everything that says about cryptocurrency people. So they maybe think different. So I think in some way blockchain technology can be applied, but I don't think it's going to be happen that what blockchain people are thinking about. So that's my personal opinion.
Interesting, very interesting. We have a very interesting group of panelists. Maybe what I have in mind is slightly different from the script that I've given. So, how about this? Let me ask a question. Do you think regulation, when regulation kicks in, will that help the blockchain and cryptocurrency market? When I talk about regulations, I'm talking about maybe a regulated digital asset exchange, or maybe in Singapore and in other parts of the world, we talk about the application of an RMO license. Do you think that will help draw in more accredited investors into the whole ball game that we have? Do you think the regulations are going to make a difference and help this industry grow a lot better?
First of all, I didn't know there was a script. I wasn't given anything, but anyway. So I want to do it too long. So this question is simple. Yes, definitely positive. As you guys see the news, EOS basically settled their battle with the SEC, which is good news. The block stack, they did a Reg A approved token raising. So definitely it's positive. So we have more than 50 LPs. They all institution investors and big family office in the United States. They are all waiting for more regulation to come in. Then I think the only positive impact on crypto community, especially in Korea as well.
I think in some way regulation means in some way as an infrastructure. Infrastructure means that any players can play their own business or own their things on the floor that has infrastructure. So that means just like credit investors can have access to the crypto market. So I think some regulations should be applied to the blockchain market, because that means there's an infrastructure about liquidity or any contracts for traditional players out there. So that's one of the ways we can work together as a blockchain industry, and the others comply together.
Yeah, I think institutional money always wants to play it safe. So projects like Pact and Fidelity leading the way will make it good for everyone else to enter the market.
Yes, I think as long as it's not absurd regulation, any regulation coming in and providing guidelines will be beneficial to the whole industry.
I also have similar opinion. If you're like a credit investor, you need to think about the taxation issues as well as other legal issues before investing. And if you want to invest in crypto, if there's regulation, they will definitely find some guidelines. So yeah, definitely yes.
So I mean, coming back to the panelists here, I mean, when we talk about regulation and so forth, do you think STO exchange, or securitized exchange, regulated securitized exchange is going to make a little bit more difference, in today's market? Would it be better? Will the accredited investors feel a lot safer, to get themselves into a STO or asset-backed project? Maybe a real estate, maybe a artwork, and so forth. Do you think there's a market for this?
So, there was a massive trend on STOs when the winter hit, right? Everyone's talking about, and it's like SEC compliant. And I was like, what does that even mean? If it's 100% SEC compliant, then why don't you just, run a traditional business, right? But so tokenizing assets, comes back all the time. But if it's basically trying to provide liquidity or faster liquidity to an asset class where the regulatory bodies do not want to provide that liquidity, that's against the regulation that's already in the traditional financial sector. So that's a dilemma, right? I think what's happening, at least in the blockchain space and the cryptocurrency industry right now, is people are going into SDOs when ICO bear market starts, right? Explaining it as if it's the next trend or the trend that's going to come. I do believe that a lot of the assets need to be digitized. And down the road, yes, STO exchanges and STOs will be a part of the industry. But I do not think it's going to be replacing what's the current ICO or coin offering or the current cryptocurrency offerings of now, because there's a massive gap. The current trading and investment is around fast liquidity, and that just doesn't make it doesn't go well with this, right? So if you're an investor, if the trend goes back to everyone wants to invest in tokens again, it's STOs is not fun anymore. So I think that's how the view is at this point.
Yeah, personally, I'm not bullish on STO yet. Yeah, I think it's too early.
I pretty much agree with Steve again. STO is, I think in the United States, if it is STO business going on, it's just applied to the same as just financial laws or regulations. So I don't think it makes more efficient for now. So there's many ways to develop it. So I'm gonna watch how it's gonna can be changed or different later on.
I think all the incumbents recognize blockchain and that securities should get tokenized later. It's just the regulation that needs to take place first.
I think it depends on which business or which underlying asset is securitized. If it's just shitty company, then it doesn't make any sense to invest in STO. But if it's really a good business and a sexy company, then I think the liquidity will come in. So yeah, it depends on which underlying asset.
I think most of us are not really that confident, and of course we can't predict the future. What's going to happen. We have passed the ICO era. We have also did numerous work on IEOs and so forth. Today or maybe in 2020, what do you think will be the next trend of fundraising or the next trend for cryptocurrency?
In terms of investment, gaming is the area that we are very bullish on. We believe that virtual world, real world connection definitely is going to facilitate by blockchain and cryptocurrency. And in more macro view, since I was trading at Goldman, I always look at the market as a macro view. I think it's not main narrative right now, but a lot of traditional hedge fund is talking about concern around US dollar depreciation. Like you said, you saw in Chinese yuan and Bitcoin movement. Of course, there is no clear relationship, but you saw the relationship during this when the Chinese yuan got dropped a lot, Bitcoin went up. Definitely Chinese people using the Bitcoin as a hedge for their portfolio. I think it's going forward, since the opportunity costs of having non-income producing assets like a gold and etc. is getting smaller and smaller. And then when you see the financial market, derivative market is largest at the moment. And then when we talk about portfolio diversification, actually the diversification impact is much less compared to 50 years ago, because derivative market is basically impacted by underlying asset. So if your equity, fixed income, C, D, E, different assets, already connected by derivative, and then its counterparties all connected. So diversification impact is much smaller. So if you think about the diversification, I think having a Bitcoin, a small portion of their portfolio is totally makes sense. That one, hedge, the second, idiosyncratic return, third is basically diversification impact. So I think that narrative might be spread around in traditional market, then people might see the Bitcoin as really like a diversification asset class. So I think that's the two main thing that I'm watching closely. And third, I think enterprise is coming into the space is a big thing. So as you see in Korea or Asia, after Libra released their the paper, I got like 5 or 6 LinkedIn message on that week from Asian biggest conglomerates. Those who are not interested in blockchain for a year, but suddenly they message me, hey Steve, what should I do? Hey Steve, do you know anyone in Libra? Hey Steve, what is this? So basically, I think there is a small formal component around the enterprise, especially here in Asia. I think the enterprise is kicking in, and then a lot of the quality projects that provide institutional level of their service, whatever you do. I think when these two parties merge, I think that's another kind of big momentum for the entire blockchain space to move the adoption thesis forward.
I think Steve really explained well on the financial side of the macro economy and how it's related to blockchain. There's also like going into the enterprise side of and how it's linked to blockchain. I think there's also a massive understanding between the companies who were late in the game for mobile, like when smartphones came out, like Samsung was late in making their own OS. They tried something with Quad OS and miserably failed. And there are like SK was interested in it. Like most of the telcos had their own app stores, but they failed miserably. And right now it's the underlying tech is Android. And a lot of these tech companies are looking into blockchain, coming from Asia, as a platform that's upcoming, and they don't want to be late in the game anymore. So, like when I talk to a lot of the people who are looking into blockchain in large companies in Korea, they always have a small group of team that's looking into the space, and like with one eye, and with the other eye they're looking into the regulatory bodies movements, right? So it's like they want to jump in a little early and invest in it, and some companies are investing heavily into developing things regarding blockchain, but they're always like eyeing the regulators and what their perspective is, because like there's large IT companies that wanted to build blockchain platforms, but like when they announced it, they get a call, right, and they suddenly have to pause. And this has been happening a lot. So I think it feels like there's a sentiment for large companies joining into blockchain, and they're just waiting for the right moment and the right ecosystem to be built. And it might actually be a lot of waiting. I have no say in what the trend is going to be, because like most of the trends regarding IEOs and launchpads, and like, you know, different types of exchanges, different ways of offering tokens, these are kind of micro trends. And whoever comes up with something significant, probably Binance or bigger exchanges or bigger players, are going to copy it and make use of it and catch up early and utilize that to make quick money out of it. And then they'll probably look for the next trend. But I think it's more important to kind of look into the macro side of how things are evolving and what the bigger players are kind of interested in. Because as a startup or someone who's entering into this industry as a small player, you know, it's like all IT companies, all startups, when they start, it's either you get acquired by a large company or you go IPO, right? It takes time, of course. So I think that angle of seeing how the big players are looking into it and how the macro players playing along is really important.
It's really hard to predict what's going to come in 2020, but I just have one thing in mind, which is Bitcoin. So I think people are going to be still bullish on Bitcoin, but if you choose like other altcoins, it's really hard to predict. So if you want to invest, just invest in Bitcoin.
That's good stuff, man. Yeah, so I think we have seen a lot of projects, especially in the recent months, focusing on a lot of adoption and hoping that, you know, they could use through adoption to drive their token up, but it's a little bit slow. So I would like to go back to tradition, which is bang on Bitcoin, and we'll see what happens next year.
I think everyone seems to be like going back to the community, right? So we'll see like more initial wallet opening type of trends, people offering coins to their wallet users.
All right. I think the Bitcoin is the way to look at, and we have pointed out a few trends about how regulation is going to help with the industry and how the gaming industry is going to change, you know, from using the technology. So let's call it a day, and let's stay around for more networking. You know, thanks Biki for organizing this. Thanks.